Hey there! Welcome back to another review, this time of the 1973 science fiction horror film, The Crazies. Now, I know this is a film that has a pretty large cult following, and to each their own. I am not a fan of this one. I personally thought this was The Crappies. Because I honestly thought this was a crappy, lame, boring, slow-paced, dull film that really didn't have that much going for it other than some decent direction by George Romero, a good idea, good concept that I personally didn't feel lived up to its full potential, and some pretty effective sequences here and there, and some decent effects for a low budget. But other than that, there really isn't that much to write home about this movie. There really is not a lot that I can truthfully say is really that great about the film. Even the things that I liked about it are not anything that's really that spectacular or really noteworthy or amazing or worthy of that much praise. For the most part, the film is pretty much forgettable. I don't get some of the All Movie Guide says frightening and exciting, a surprising neglected treat. This isn't frightening at all. And I thought it was the complete antithesis of exciting. Almost unlimited blood and gore, an onslaught of horror upon horror by Cinefantastique magazine. Where is the gore? There's like a guy who gets shot in the head and some red paint falls out of it, and there's blood squibs. It's not that gory. It's got some blood in it, but it doesn't have any gore. That's false advertising by Cinefantastique. An onslaught of horror upon horror. It's an onslaught of boredom. That's what it is. I mean, I'm probably going to piss off a bunch of people. I don't really care because I personally feel Romero has done a lot better than this after this and even before this. I'm not even the biggest fan of Night of the Living Dead, but I could definitely say I like that more than The Crazies. As you can see, I'm not that crazy about The Crazies. And I actually am curious about seeing the remake now, because from what I've heard about it, it improves upon a lot of things. Now, The Crazies is directed by George Romero, and like I said, his direction is fine. He just doesn't really have that much to work with. He has a very low budget of only $275,000, and it shows. And this is the type of plot that really needed like a bigger budget so you could have more action, so you can have more gore, so you can have more to it, so you can actually hire some competent actors so to really bring your script to life. And this film didn't have any of that, so that definitely hurt the film and what Romero could do with it. Now I know it's based on a script by Paul McCullough, who wrote original screenplay for some script called The Mad People, and Romero rewrote it and turned it into The Crazies. So not every single element of this is entirely Romero's. I don't know how much he rewrote and what he changed. I have no idea. I would have to say Romero's screenwriting here, he's done a lot better, especially with the characters. This film suffers from the lack of likable characters that you can relate to, and characters that you really connect with. So you have a film that is trying to be suspenseful and thrilling, and you just have these characters that either don't have that much character development, or they don't really have that much of a personality, and there's just really no reason to root for these characters. And then it just becomes an extremely sluggish film. And it just becomes a slog to sit through because it's just meandering around. It's going through the paces. You're just there's some characters who are going around and who I don't really care about, and they're trying to survive being hunted or being taken out by these military guys, and they're just taking out these faceless military guys one by one, and it's just, what's their plight? What are they fighting for? And who gives a fuck? Really, that's honestly one of the film's biggest problems is you have all these characters, none of which are likable, none of which are memorable, none of which have anything that really makes you root for them or makes the experience worthwhile. The performances are pretty awful as well by everyone in the cast. Lane Carroll, MacMillan, Harold Wayne, Lloyd Hollar. Lynn Lowry was alright, I guess, as Kathy, but her performance still wasn't that great. Richard Liberty, Richard France, Harvey Spillman, Will Disney, Edith Bell. There's a reason why most of these actors never acted again, because they're not actors. They're well, I guess they are actors, but they're bad actors. And he casted a lot of people who were actual townspeople from this particular place that he was shooting the film in. And forgive whatever noises you're hearing. Apparently my cat is also crazy about this movie. Or he's been driven insane by the film's absolute bullshit. What is wrong with you? Come on, man. The cat doesn't like it either. The cat's like, stop talking about the Crazies. It's driving me nuts. But, that's going to be a hard transition. But yeah, it was shot in Pittsburgh. So it employed a lot of actors from that area. And it does show. It totally shows. These are townspeople. These are just your local community theater guys who were given the job and they were not right for the part. The film also features a score by Bruce Roberts, and there's some elements of it that I thought were kind of effective. I like the eerie humming version of the song that you hear pretty prominently in Died with a Vengeance. I'm going to look up what exactly the name of the song is. When Johnny comes marching home. Da-dun, 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 da-dun. So that's in this film, and I thought it was actually used pretty well. And there's a few other bits of music that were okay, but for the most part, though, the score, there really isn't a lot to it. It really isn't that. There, just like the performances by the cast and by a lot of other people, it just doesn't really leave that much of an impression. The cinematography by Bill Hinsman, it's okay. You can tell that this is a low budget film, and so the cinematography probably would not have been able to add that much to it. The editing by Romero, I personally thought was a hack job, and Romero is a guy that I respect immensely, and it's really too bad that he's no longer with us, and may he rest in peace. But even he would probably want people to still criticize him every now and then, and not be afraid to say when he's not doing something right, or when he's not doing as good of a job as he could. And I personally totally feel this editing is a total example of that. It makes the film and the story feel like it's completely unfocused. It's jumping back and forth from all these other different places, and it makes it kind of confusing. So the editing definitely was not a positive. The film's 103 minutes, and it drags so much it feels like 203. This is a film that I almost passed out 30 minutes in, because it was just that dull. It also has issues with how you were able to differentiate who is infected with this virus and who isn't. It doesn't really make any of this clear. So, and then part of that might be the editing. So you have random scenes, you just have a film that just shambles around, and it has scenes with the military bitching about their job and how hard it is and difficult and whatever, and moaning and groaning and bitching and crying. And then you have there's a scientist guy who's trying to figure out the cure for for this virus that was unleashed upon this small town. Because the basic gist of the plot is the military inadvertently or on purpose unleashes this virus on a small town, this biological agent. It causes people to lose their minds and go crazy. And there's this doctor who's trying to find an antidote. The military declares martial law on the small town in order to prevent the virus from spreading any further, because it's a very contagious virus and could spread all the way across the United States and possibly the world if things aren't nipped in the bud immediately. And it also goes back and forth between, so you have sequences with these group of people who, I think there was like some guys who were like firemen, and there was this other woman who I believe is a girlfriend to one of these guys, and she's also happens to be pregnant, which is kind of reminds me of Dawn of the Dead, and the pregnant lady is handled a lot better in that film than it is here, if you ask me. Then you have, I'm trying to remember some of the stuff. Okay, so you have, it jumps. It also jumps to the White House, not really the White House, but the government. Like, people in offices talking about what they're going to do. We need to send some planes out there to maybe potentially nuke the place, and so on and so on. There's so much talking in this. It's an overly talky film that really isn't that action-packed. It could have used more action. There's scenes where you have people shooting guns and people get shot, but there really isn't a lot to that because, once again, the characters are so weak. So there's no suspense, there's no thrills, because I don't care who lives or dies. These soldiers seem like they're just faceless stormtroopers. There isn't a lot to it. And I know I've said that many times, but that really does sum up the film rather nicely. There isn't that much to this film. There really isn't that much to be crazy about the Crazies. Other than the idea. I like the idea of a biological agent getting unwittingly or willingly released on a small town, and the effects of that. I like that. The opening of the film is rather chilling and well done, where you see a father flipping out and burning the house down and threatening to kill his kids, and you see the aftermath of what has happened. He's already killed his wife. You don't know why this happened, and then you find out it was a virus that caused this. That was actually a rather effective sequence. There's a scene near the end where you have the character of Kathy, who actually gets shot by some civilians in the middle of a crossfire, and she dies in the arms of her boyfriend, David. And it's a pretty tragic moment because she was also pregnant with David's child. There's some effective drama there. It would have been more effective, though, if I actually cared about these characters, but since I didn't, it wasn't nearly as effective as it could be. The ending has the main scientist doctor guy losing the vaccine because there's a bunch of crazies who come in and push him down a flight of stairs in a flash, pretty much, because they push him down the stairs really quickly. And then the last scene in the film shows a colonel one of the colonels, played by Lloyd Hollar. He's asked to relocate to a new infected town, and he boards a helicopter, and he looks down with sadness at the chaos of the town below as some sappy song plays in the background. And that's really... the ending kind of went the way I thought it would. The virus was going to get out. It was going to spread to some other town. They weren't able to contain it. So it wasn't really that shocking in that regard. And there were some other characters that died along the way too. But I really honestly could care less because the film doesn't do a very good job making me care about these characters or what happens to them. So... And that film also had some pretty bad sound design, because I don't know whose bright idea it was to constantly have the sounds of crickets chirping in the background. That was really a bad idea, because all it did was just further hammer home the point that I was watching an unbelievably boring movie. Because the crickets are chirping again. It was just like, your sounds of crickets chirping or just like nature noises. It was just, I don't know what they were thinking. There were also scenes that were just absolutely ridiculous and laughable. Like there was a scene in where there's some crazy people are in a field and there's some soldiers there, and I got to give the film credit for the costume design of the soldiers. I thought that was pretty iconic look, and they did a good job with the low budget with the design of these soldiers and their biohazard suits. And so these soldiers are in a field. There's some crazy people in a field, and there's this woman who's inexplicably brooming, like she has a broom and she's sweeping the grass, and apparently there's some social commentary behind it. I don't know what it is, and I could care less what it is, because that scene was just absolutely laughable to me. It was fucking silly. There's this woman just in the middle of a fucking field with a broom sweeping. Like, I don't really... What was the fucking point of that? That was just silly. And I know a lot of critics and a lot of people pointed out the film's social commentary. You know what? If it is there, and I'm not discounting or saying that it isn't there, it probably is. That doesn't change the fact that The Crazies is an incredibly dull, boring film to watch. I don't give a flying fuck about the social commentary if the movie isn't any good. I mean, if the movie isn't interesting, if the movie isn't exciting, if it is boring and slow-paced, it can have as much social commentary as it fucking wants, and it doesn't make a fucking difference to me. I know there are a lot of people out there who put social commentary on a pedestal when it comes to evaluating or analyzing a movie. I'm not one of them. You can do that if you wish, and I have no issue with that whatsoever. It just isn't that important to me. It never has been, and it never will. To me, a film needs to succeed on more merits than just what it says about society. That's way down on the list for me when it comes to a successful film. This film fails on the three most important factors for me for a successful film that I would watch again and again. And those are the story, the characters, and the entertainment factor. The story, while it has a good concept, is muddled, has these different subplots, but none of them really go together that well. And you just have a case of too many cooks, too many people in the kitchen, not really with the script, but I mean by too many characters. There's too many characters who don't really have that much character development or personality or moments for them to really shine, and would have benefited from having less characters, and also making the motivation of these three main characters who were going around on a hunting spree, killing every soldier they see. It would have been nice to see a little bit more of an explanation of what their motivation was, because all it seemed to me is they're just running around killing soldiers. They're trying to protect themselves. Are they infected with the virus? You find out later David is immune, but he's an asshole who decides he doesn't want to let the military or let the scientists know about that because apparently he's a selfish prick. It's just one of those things. It's like it's enough to drive you crazy thinking about it. Yeah, it fails as a story when it comes to the story. It definitely fails when it comes to the characters because there isn't a single one that I gave a damn about. And it fails on the entertainment factor because it's an incredibly boring movie. So I really don't know what else to say about The Crazies. Except if I were to rate it out of 5 stars, I would give it 1.5 out of 5 stars. I'm giving that rating for Romero's admittedly solid direction, despite what he was hampered with in terms of the budget, in terms of what he could do with the script, with the story, and with his cast. Some effective sequences, like the opening sequence, some decent practical effects like blood squibs and things like that, the costume design of the soldiers, and some bits of the score that I didn't mind. And that's really about it. That's all I really have to say about The Crazies. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the review. And as always, I will see you guys later. See ya.